So I woke up at 3:30 in the morning yesterday and just feeling kind of anxious. Couldn't go back to sleep. Couldn't do anything except think about the spankings my son used to get when he was a kid. And it's crazy. I mean, I knew I was going to talk about this at some point on the podcast, but I wasn't necessarily planning for it to be today. But yesterday morning when I woke up, I started thinking about how he responded to those whoopings, right? And many of us who are Gen X, we got whoopings. But, I remember the look on his face. And honestly, I didn't even want to do this podcast episode today because I was like, you know what? I do not want to be on here crying because I woke up crying yesterday. And so I started thinking about when he would get a whooping, he would look back at me and there will be terror on his face. And the trip is he's 31 years old now, but I now am reliving that. And we've had conversations about this recently, and it's clear that those memories are still fresh on his mind, even though it was decades ago. And maybe it's on my mind because he'll be 32 in a couple of weeks. I don't know. But I know it was on my mind, and I was like, I don't really want to talk about it because I was crying yesterday as I was telling somebody about it. I start crying again. Even in the evening, I start crying again, retelling the story. I was like, dang, I don't want to be on here crying about this. And I was like, you know what? It's even more important that I have this conversation. Because if I'm this impacted by it, imagine how kids are feeling. Now, I was a kid who grew up, I didn't have a whole lot of whoopings. I was the good kid. I mean, I almost never got in trouble. When I did, it wasn't seen as like, we need to beat you for this. But I remember when I made the conscious decision that my kids were going to get more whoopings because people would always say stuff to me when I was growing up. Like anytime I did something wrong, like your kids going to do this to you when they get older. I said, no, they're not because they're going to get whoopings. Right. And that was the only response that I was ever taught. It's the only response that most of us are ever taught is when kids do something wrong, you whoop they behind. But what if that's not the right way? What if there's a better way? And when I became an educator, I couldn't whoop those kids. So I said to myself, there has to be a way for me to get the kids at school to do what I need them to do so that I can teach them. And it does not entail me giving them a whooping because I can't. I lose my job. And then I started thinking if there's a way for me to get the kids at school to do what I want them to do without whooping them, there should be a way for me to get my own children to do what I need them to do without whooping them. Light bulb moment, right? Things started to shift. By the way, if you are new here, I am Kalisha Washington. I'm your parenting BFF. I am I'm a former educator. I'm the host and founder of the Don't Screw Up Your Kids podcast, where I help ordinary parents build and rebuild extraordinary relationships with their children. And for me, it is imperative. So here we are. And a few minutes in already, but let's go ahead and get into this topic today. I want to talk about spankings. I want to talk about discipline. I want to talk about the fear associated with it. And I started thinking about this. I'm like, as I'm thinking about planning for this episode, I'm like, okay, what processes are kids' minds and brains and bodies going through, even as they're preparing for the whooping before they get it? Right? Even when it's like, go to your room, you're about to get a whooping, it's find my belt. Back in the days, folks used to say, go get that switch off the tree, right? In that process, what's happening in kids' bodies? What's happening in their minds? What's their brains doing? So I started doing a little bit of research about that, like what's actually happening in kids as they're preparing to get a whooping. Or if it's, back in the days, it used to be wait till your father gets home, right? And then you're anticipating that. Or even, back in my mom's days, it was the neighbor caught you doing something. The neighbor either walked you home or called your parents and let them know what happened. And then you getting in trouble when you get home with your mom. And then when your dad comes home, she's like, wait till your dad gets home, then you in trouble with your dad. Shoot, the neighbors, if the neighbors saw you cutting up, they probably whoop you right there on the street, right? No problem. And so when I think about these things, I'm like, man, what's happening in a child's brain during this time that they're considering, that they're thinking about, that they know that a whooping is coming? As I started doing that research, it was like fear. Their bodies go into a fear response. Now, some people want their kids to fear them. I don't know why. I don't know why anybody would want their kids to fear them. I guess I do know why, because there's some religious patterns in that too. But, anyways, we're not going to get into that. We're not going to get in that today. It's going to be a podcast episode. We talk about religion one day, but today's not the day. Start thinking about what happens in a kid's body when they're thinking about getting that whooping. And it's the fear. They start to feel anxious. People talk about anxiety all the time, and I'm not one of those people. I don't like it when people are like, I have anxiety, I have anxiety. People wear it like a badge. I'm not even talking about that. I'm talking about their hearts start to race, like mine did at 3:30 in the morning yesterday as I was thinking about this. Um, their hearts start to race, their minds start to think about how can I get out of this? And if they've been down this road before, they know there's no way out of this for me. Like I'm doomed, I'm helpless. And it starts to build in their brain like helplessness. The thought process that there's some things I won't be able to get myself out of. Like things may happen to me that I don't have any control of stopping. Like I don't have any power to say it teaches powerlessness. And I don't think that's what we're aiming for with our kids. I think most parents have the right mindset. Most parents have the right heart. Most parents want what's best for their kids. Most parents don't want to be embarrassed in public. I've heard parents say, if you embarrass me, I'm going to embarrass you. And I probably said that to my kids a few times, like, let's be real, probably more than a few. But really, what is that about? If we knew that we might be doing harm to our kids so that we are not embarrassed, what are we really doing? Right? We see the kids cutting up. I mean, now since everything is, your phone, you got a camera right in your hand, right? But back in the days, we would see kids cutting up in the grocery store, and we're like, that would never be my kid. Y'all know what I'm talking about. We see that and we're like, never, never would my kid do that. Throwing tantrums and hollering and crying. And I'm Gen X. I'm 50. Okay, proudly 50. I come from that generation where it's like, if you crying, I'm gonna give you something to cry about. I'm gonna give you something to cry about. I'm supposed to be the person that loves you, and I'm gonna give you something to cry about. I'm crying because I'm feeling something that's causing me to cry. And you want to give me something more to cry about. I'm telling y'all, this stuff is racing in my head. And so I'm really dying to hear from other people what y'all think about this. I know some of y'all who are watching this were raised just like I was. Some of y'all had parents just like mine or grandparents just like mine. I was raised by my grandma, who was born in 1923, so you can imagine. But if we think about what's actually happening in the minds and the hearts of our kids when they're preparing to get a whooping, and then as they go on into the actual whooping, I mean, a number of things happen. But in their brain, it's only the fear processes. The amygdala is turned on. The stress hormones are racing, the adrenaline in their bodies are racing. And that stress over time, chronic stress leads to stuff like high blood pressure, heart disease, stroke, all these things, all these really negative things that we don't want to set our kids up for. But we start to create that foundation while they are kids, right? Then the learning part of their brain, the prefrontal cortex, where the real learning happens, is turned off because the only thing that's happening is fear. The only thing that's happening is, how can I get myself out of this? Is there something I can say to stop it? Is there something I can say to prevent it? And you get all the promises like, I'll never do it again. I won't do it again. But really, the brain is not processing, I'm not going to do this again. That's why they do it again, because the brain is not processing that. The brain is not processing, I shouldn't do this again if I don't want to get a whooping, right? The brain, the thinking part of the brain, the part of the brain that's going to make them make better decisions, is completely checked out at the time that they're getting a whooping. All they're thinking about is, I want to get rid of this pain. I don't want to experience this anymore. So the empty promises that are made at that time, where they're afraid and they're in pain, they're in survival mode, they're not processing. So if you had one of those parents like my grandma, who would like whoop you, and each whip is like some words attached to it, like, did not tell you not to. They're not processing. They're not processing. So then when they do the thing again, and you're like, didn't I tell you when I was whooping you the last time, and you promised never to do it again? You can't hold them to that promise. Their brain wasn't even turned on to the promise. They're not even thinking about the promise. They just want it to stop. And I'll never forget, someone close to me was in an abusive relationship. And I'm like, why don't she leave? And we've seen it all the time. We've seen it all over social media. We've seen it on TV. We've seen it on the talk shows where people are in these abusive relationships and they don't leave. And you're like, why don't you leave? And they're like, oh, but he loves me, right? And I'm like, why would somebody think that somebody who's hitting them, who's putting their hands on them, loves them? Why would they think that? Did we not set that foundation? Did we not set that foundation? Do kids turn that switch off? Is it, my mom loves me, but she's whooping me, or my dad loves me and he's whooping me? He's hitting me. And listen, some of y'all, I was never the parent to like knuckle down with their kids, but I hear parents bragging about that. Like, oh, I'll punch them in the chest. We see videos online where people are just like take off on somebody, right? I remember my son telling me his dad had punched him in the chest one time. I lost it, but he didn't tell me about it until he was in his 20s and no longer with his dad. He didn't tell me while it was happening because he wouldn't have ever had to go back over there again. I would have protected him from that, but I didn't because I didn't know it was happening. But I also hadn't opened those lines of communication where my son felt safe talking to me about what was happening at his dad's house. He probably didn't feel that I would protect him from that because I was also whooping him. I wasn't punching him, and I would always whoop him on his behind. But did that make me the safe space? Did that make me the safe person to go and talk to? I named this Don't Screw Up Your Kids, right? Because I know I made a whole lot of mistakes when my kids were growing up. And, I was 18 when I had my son. I was 19 when I had my daughter. I started college when they were 2 and 3 years old. I wasn't physically present most of their lives growing up. I was working, I was going to school, I got to college, I got 2 bachelor's degrees and 2 master's degrees, became an educator. So now I went from, having to work 2 or 3 jobs while I was in college to now I don't have to work 2 or 3 jobs, but I work one job that is like 2 or 3 jobs. And then I took a $14,000 pay cut from selling insurance in order to teach. And then I was tutoring after school, proctoring ACT exams on the weekend, teaching summer school every summer. But then when my kids will cut up, I'm whooping them. Like I don't have time to spend with them to go places and travel and do things. I don't have time and money at the same time. I either have time and no money or money and no time. I don't have the time and money to do all the things that we should be doing together, but I got time to whoop they behinds when they acting up. What message does that send? Seriously, what message are we sending to our kids when we make sure we make time to whip that behind? And I remember having the conversation with my dad, with my kid's dad, because, of course, I'm high and mighty and getting it right, right? And I remember telling him, like, when my son does well, my son ended up saying to me, I said, "Why do you keep acting up at school?" He said something like, "My dad never notices when I am good." And I said, "What?" And I went to my kid's dad and I was like, "Listen, this is what he's saying. You got to notice when he's doing good and say something. Acknowledge it, notice it." He said he don't do good long enough for me to notice it. I said, "You need to pay attention better. And the moment you see him doing something good, you better acknowledge it. You have to." And then I became more intentional. I wasn't getting it all right. But what Maya Angelou said, when you know better, do better, right? So the things that I did figure out and I did learn, especially as an educator, I learned some things. And when I did, I put those things into practice, right? If kids are misbehaving in order to get attention, you give them the attention for the positive, they'll do the positive things. So you learn better, you do better. Um, But when it comes to this whooping, right? When it comes to spanking your kids, and there's a better way, and we got to talk about the better ways, right? The better ways are to have natural consequences. If a kid doesn't do their homework because they're playing a video game, you take away the video game. Natural consequence, right? Or, and for a period of time, not forever, not forever. I remember as a teacher, I would talk to a parent, their kid was cut up at school. They're like, "Well, I've already taken away their phone. I've already taken away their privileges. I took them off the choir. I took them off a drill team. I took them off the football team, whatever." Like they've taken away all the, they said, "I'm nothing left to take." And I'm like, "Shh, do you give them an opportunity to earn them back?" Because once you've taken everything and they have nothing left, what are they working towards? I didn't even know there were comments here. Ooh, there's a bunch of comments here. um, when you take all the things from the kids and they have nothing left to work towards, you got to give them an opportunity to earn them back. You got to give them an opportunity to show you that they can be good. You got to give them some responsibility. You got to give them an opportunity to say, "I'm going to give you a choice to choose. You've been breaking curfew. I'm going to give you a chance today. I'm going to let you go out. I'll let you earn. I'm going to give you something to do to earn the right. I'm going to let you go out. You got to be back by 10 o'clock. If you don't make it back by 10 o'clock today, no excuses. The next 2 weeks, you ain't going nowhere. The next month, you're going nowhere." And it could be progressive. It's like the first offense, 2 weeks. The second offense, a month. The next offense, 3 months. Make it progressive, but make it fitting. And trust me, punishing a kid most of the time feels much worse than getting a whooping. I remember there was this guy I used to talk to back in the days. You know how we talked to. And it was summertime. And this guy, I had called him, and his mom was like, "He's on punishment. He can't talk on the phone for the whole summer." I was like, "Okay." I called back like in a week. His mama was like, "He can't talk on the phone for the whole summer." I called back like in another week because I'm like, surely she's not going to keep him on punishment the whole summer. Like, what kind of mom monster is that? Because I'd never been on punishment for the whole time. I remember my grandma, I don't even know what I had done, but she was like, "You can't talk on the phone for the rest of the night." The rest of the night. Do you know I got in that kitchen and snuck on that phone and like rotary, right? Rotary. I'm on the phone. My grandma picked up the phone in her room and was like, "You on the phone? Okay. So now you can't use the phone for the next 2 weeks." I was like, "Okay." The next day I was back on the phone, right? And then she just gave up. She just gave up. She didn't hold me to the 2 weeks. So this mom who was holding her son to the full summer, I was like, "Oh, she crazy." I don't know what he did, but his mama crazy. She kept him on punishment that whole. I called like maybe 2 weeks before summer vacation was up, and he was still on punishment. I don't even remember what he did, but I was like, "Oh, his mama crazy. She just crazy. Who does that? Who keeps their kid on punishment the whole summer?" Right now, every kid is different, and I gotta address that. Every kid is different because my son was the kind who would just accept his punishment. If he was going to get a whooping, he was going to get the whooping. He was going to tell the truth. He's just a very honest kid. He's just like, I'm gonna take it. If I'm gonna get a whooping, if I'm gonna get a punishment, whatever the consequence is, I'm gonna accept the consequence, and it just is what it is, and I'm okay with it. But my daughter, she's gonna lie about it. She gonna lie, cheat, steal, whatever she got to do to keep from getting that whooping, to keep from getting that punishment. She is not gonna just accept it and be good with it. Every kid is different. With my daughter, just the threat of a whooping, I mean, ballistic, you know. And so I was like, "Is this manipulation? Are we teaching our kids to become manipulative in order to avoid the whooping? What are we teaching?" Because they say our thoughts become our words become our actions become our character becomes our destiny. And so I'm like, if we're if we through whooping our kids are now getting them to think about, what do I have to do to escape this? What do I have to do to get away from this? Are we teaching them to start to become manipulative? And I don't think they're not consciously thinking, "I want to be manipulative." They're not consciously thinking, "Let me manipulate my way out of this." They're just thinking, "I got to get away." They are completely in survival mode and are like, "I got to do whatever it takes for me to get out of this situation." And some of that can be good for kids, right? When it comes to whooping and I got to escape from my mom, my dad, my grandparents, my caregivers, the people who say they love me, that's hard to handle. When it's I'm walking down the street and there's something I should fear or somebody I should fear, somebody who's no good towards me. I almost went political on that, but let's keep the main thing, Kalisha. But if I'm walking down the street and I see somebody who can harm me, I need that instinct to click on. But when I've been clicking on that instinct because I'm afraid of getting a whooping, what's the outcome of that? What's the long-term effects of that? So what's the solution? What's the solution? I think the first step is communication, right? Sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes kids don't even understand what you're asking of them. They're unclear about your expectations. And I learned that as an educator because they would say, "Okay, if you tell the kids come in quietly and they come in and they're whispering, and then you're like, but I told you to come in quietly." They're like, "I was whispering quietly. What are you, what are you talking about?" Right? And they were like, "If you mean for them to be silent coming in, you need to say silent. You need to be explicit about what you're expecting of them so that they can do what it is you're expecting them to do." So with our kids, similar. And we will always, as parents, say, "Oh, they should know what I meant." How about we just be clear about what we mean? Why don't we just work on articulating to the best of our ability exactly what it is that we want our kids to do? And then we teach them and we give them a chance to practice it and we give them a chance to get it right. And for people who are like my kids who were raised in two different households, me and their dad had joint custody. Okay. Their dad and I had joint custody. Right? We're gonna keep the English. And sometimes they were in my house. Half the week they were in my house, half the week they were at their dad's house. Two separate sets of expectations. And they learned them and they caught on to them. And I remember my daughter writing in her college um, personal statement about how hard it was for her growing up in two different households with two sets of rules. And I was hot about it when she talked. When I read her letter, I was like, you think a college is going to let you in because you said it was so hard for you having to adapt to two different sets of rules? Like, I was furious that that was her thing. But then I thought about it and I was like, well, her childhood wasn't that bad. Other kids' stories are going to be far worse, right? Other kids' stories, other kids have had harder times than what she had. And I'm glad about that, you know. But she hadn't had to work hard to overcome hard times and things like that. So I was grateful for that. Um, but going back to these whoopings, right? If you open up the communication with your kids and you allow them to express what they need to express, you allow them to object to what you're asking them to do. They're not being disrespectful, but we were raised on this don't talk back mentality. So, like, for example, if you said to your kid, you got to be back by 10 o'clock, the party don't really get jumping until 9:30. Or they're going to the skating rink and the best songs, the DJ don't even play the best songs until 9:30, but you don't give them an opportunity to share that with you. And when they try, you tell them not to talk back. But then if you could have adjusted the time instead of them leaving the house at 7 o'clock and coming in at 10. What if you gave them the opportunity to negotiate and leave at 8:30 and stay until 11 or 11:30, right? Let them open the doors of communication so that they can communicate and they can critically think about ways to do things differently that don't lead them to them being in trouble later on. We have to open the doors of communication with our kids. Um, when it comes to uh, what was I going to say? Oh, I have some notes, but I had a train of thought. They say that when kids are defiant, it's because there's something wrong in the relationship. And I believe that. They said that. I learned that as an educator, of course, but then I applied it to my relationship with my kids. And it's true. When there's a problem in the relationship, when the relationship is strained, that's when you get kids who are defiant. They may do something wrong unintentionally. They may do something wrong because they didn't understand the rules. They didn't understand what you were expecting of them. But defiance, where it's like, I know exactly what you expect of me and I'm choosing not to do that thing for whatever reason, then that's a very different situation. And that's usually because there's something wrong in the relationship. Now you got to do the work to repair the relationship. But that comes with also with communication. Like, are you going to have the conversation about how how the relationship is strained? About why they don't want to do what it takes to do the right thing. Most kids want to please their parents. They want to please the adults around them. They want to please their teachers. They don't want to be defiant. They don't want to get in trouble. Most kids, I don't believe in bad kids. Most kids want to do the right thing if they understand what the right thing is. So the first thing is making sure they understand the right thing. And the second thing is if they're doing something other than the right thing, there might be something they're communicating to you about your relationship with them. And you may have to have a one-on-one. You may have to just sit down and have that conversation. And when you sit down to have that conversation, give them a free pass to say whatever needs to be said. If your goal is to understand what they're thinking, you have to give those kids a free pass to say whatever is on their hearts. That means you're not going to get upset about the delivery, because if they're upset about something, the delivery is probably going to be off. People always talk about how their parents used to say stuff like, it's not what you said, it's how you said it. Okay. Forget about how they're saying it right now. Focus on what they are saying if you want to rebuild the relationship. And let me give you an example. Let's say um, the kid's supposed to take out the trash. They're not taking out the trash. You got to have that conversation to find out why they're not taking out the trash. There could be I don't believe I should have to take out the trash, right? Another teacher thing they taught us, is it knowledge, skill, or mindset? Is it that they don't know that they need to take out the trash? They know they need to take out the trash, but they don't know how to take out the trash, or they don't think they should have to take out the trash. Knowledge, skill, or mindset, right? So you find this a mindset thing. It's like, okay, we need to talk about this. It can't be let's you getting a whooping, right? Because you'll get them to comply, maybe. And the trip is, you can't force anybody to do anything. You can't force anybody to do anything. You can beat them until they die, and you can't force them to do anything that they don't want to do. How many people have been killed because they were trying to get somebody to tell or snitch on somebody? You got people that are doing life in prison right now because the system wanted them to snitch on somebody and they refused to. Lil Kim went to prison because she wouldn't snitch on somebody, I believe. Who was it? Remy Ma, I think she went to prison because she wouldn't snitch on somebody. You can't make somebody do something that they don't want to do. All you can do is try to encourage them to do what you want them to do. But based on them relationships, right? If the relationship is stronger with the other person, I'm not snitching on them. I'm gonna take that time for them. I don't know that mindset. I don't understand that mindset. Let me just say, I ain't snitching on. I ain't going to jail for nobody. If you did something wrong and you don't love me enough to say that you the one did it, I don't love you enough to take the fall for it. Just saying. And that's to everybody. Including my kids. I ain't taking the fall for nobody. But when it comes to that defiance, give them the pass to talk to you about what it is that they're feeling. And it could be that they're right. It could be that it's unfair. It could be that you had this person taking out the trash every day. They were supposed to be 1 month on, 1 month off, and now they done did the trash for 2 months in a row. But let them get it off their chest. Let them talk about it. Open that door of communication, because if you let them talk to you about the smaller things, they'll be willing to talk to you about the larger things. And there's always larger things that they need to talk to you about. But you won't know if you don't build that relationship. So I am going, lots of comments here. Thank you guys. Corrine, let me go ahead and put this on screen because I appreciate this comment. It's a good one. She said, I chose a different path with raising Brianna. When I punished Brianna as a child and teenager, it was punishment for me. It was hard, and that's what I'm always like, listen, when you punish your kid, it's a punishment for you, because you got to make sure that they do what you told them to do. If you say no TV, now they sitting there looking at you like, what we doing then? And you like, oh, like I was gonna watch my TV, but I don't want you watching your TV, right? But then now they all in your face, right? So you definitely have to figure out what you're gonna do. And yes, a punishment for you too. Let's go ahead and read this one. Lisa, she had a lot to say. She said, I was raised by my grandmother, but I reserve spankings for absolute bad behavior. I don't believe in not disciplining kids, which I don't believe in not disciplining kids either. So we're gonna talk about that. She said, I also don't believe kids just getting beat down. Talking and spanking, nope. We have conversations about why and what the consequences are, etc., before and after. I think that you can put a person who is putting themselves in harm's way in the same context as disciplining. I'm my kids' safe space, and as they are adults, I still am. I believe parents don't talk to kids. And I don't know I don't know if it ran out of space or she cut it off. But I believe in discipline. Absolutely believe in discipline, because the world's going to discipline kids. Don't mean we got to beat them, right? We still got to teach them right from wrong. We still have to make sure that they understand. We still have to give consequences, but those consequences can be the natural consequences, right? If you ride your bike in the street, you no longer have access to that bike for a long period of time. I'm going to give you a chance to earn it back. You might have to walk a certain amount before I let you earn that bike back. We're gonna have your phone calculating how many steps, and once you've done, you know, 5 days or 25,000 steps or whatever it is, then maybe you can earn your bike back. But there's a consequence. If you are talking back to your teacher, you might have to walk in there with me and apologize. And also, now that's another thing. I don't believe in forcing kids to apologize. Now, they will have to change that behavior. But I don't believe in forcing them to apologize, because what does that do? If they're not sorry, they're not sorry. And sometimes they're not sorry because sometimes they feel like they were done wrong, and sometimes they were. And I'm going to just speak for the schoolhouse. Okay. Sometimes those teachers were wrong. And I remember when I was principal, I had to have that talk with a student. I said, listen, I'm not one of those principals that think that the teacher's always right. I need you to tell me what happened. And when I told him that, he was free to go ahead and say everything that was happening in the classroom that I wasn't in there. So I'm like, tell me what happened. And he was like, no, I don't want to talk about it. I want to talk. I said, listen, let me tell you something. I'm not one of those principals that think that teachers are always right. But if there's something wrong that's happening, I have to know about it so I can do something about it. As students, you deserve the right to be in a school where you feel protected. And at home, as parents, we got to make sure that we are protecting our kids and that our kids feel protected. And not that our kids need protection from us, but they need to be protected by us. So, what else does that discipline look like? It might be, if you're going to the store, you can pick out one thing. And if they try to get a second thing, they can't get a second thing. Hey, and if you're going to cry about not getting that second thing, guess what? I'm taking that first thing and I'm putting it back on the shelf. You can have one thing as long as you deserve it, as long as you earn that one thing. And I do believe in keeping your word. So if you said they can get the one thing, if they mess up, unless that was a stipulation up front, you don't get to go back on your word. You said you can get one thing and now you cutting up. It's like, I'm gonna take back that one thing. I don't think that's fair. So let me be clear about that. That's not fair. Unless that was a stipulation in the beginning, right? If that's keep your word, because kids need to be able to trust your word. It can't be, um, you can have a honey bun, and then they're like, I want the chips too, and then something happens, and now they lost the chips and they lost the honey bun. That's not fair. That's not fair. So be fair. Be fair. Kids need that consistency. They need to know that they can trust. They will build trust. You will build trust with your kids by following through with the things that you said you were going to do, and consistently following through with the things that you say you're going to do. You say you're going to do this and you do it. You say you're going to do that and you do it. That builds trust. And when you break trust, you have to work many times harder to rebuild that trust. Right? So we have to work on that. I love I love Chrissy Saw. She had a lead. She said, man, I got a meeting, I got spanked, and I believed in it, but we don't need to traumatize children that way. It doesn't teach us nothing but fear. And I appreciate that. We talked together years ago. Love Chrissy. And so let me go back to my notes, because I want to make sure I don't miss any of the key things that I really wanted to talk about. When kids are learning, they're developing their character, right? They're learning how to be as adults. And we are a reflection of how our parents raised us to be. The kids are going to be a reflection of how we raised them to be. And if we want them to be raised with a certain level of character, that you want them to operate and live their lives a certain way, we have to give them that. We have to teach them that. We're the people that are teaching them that. And of course, the world and society are teaching them as well, but we're their first teacher. We're their first loves in most cases. Hopefully we are. Right. But how we are with our kids is going to determine how they are with our grandkids. And people who have grandkids know it's something special about them grandbabies. Okay. We don't like nobody messing with our grandbabies. We don't want our grandbabies getting no whoopings, none of that. Well, guess what? If we whooped our kids, they probably gonna turn around and whoop their kids unless we disrupt that. Unless there's something to disrupt that. Now, I am disrupting because I made sure I had the conversations with my kids. I'm like, I no longer believe in this. I apologized, I asked for their forgiveness. I told them, like, my whole mindset has changed on this. I wish I had never given you guys whoopings. And I'm sorry. And every time they bring it up, because they do bring it out, they brought it up multiple times, even in their older ages. And I'm like, nothing I could do to change the past, but I'm very sorry. And I wish I had never done that. I wish I had never done that. I wish I had the parenting skills back then to know I don't have to whip my kids. And it wasn't until I took child development classes that I started learning some different ways. But creating fear in your kids is not the way to build a relationship. You should be their protector. You should be the person that they go to when they're afraid of anything else. You can't be the person that's causing the fear, because that brain, even if they don't have the words for it, their brains are going to be teaching them everything that they need to know. Right. And so it's about power. And the last thing we want to do is teach kids that when you're the person in power, you get to like hoard your power over others. You get to like take that power dynamic and abuse other people with it, because we see that happening right now in our world, right? We see that happening with the government. We see that happening with police entities, law enforcement entities. I'm gonna just leave it at that. But we see them. I was watching a video last night. I didn't like it. I didn't like what I saw. But there was an officer, I guess, an agent. I'm gonna say. I think I think the right term is agent, who said to this one person, "If you raise your voice at me, I'll erase your voice." You say, "If you raise your voice, I'll erase your voice." And I was like, "What?" Oh, we got open threat. Raise your voice. If he raises his voice, you'll erase his voice. Power dynamics. There's long since been a fear during slavery that if slaves were ever free, they would do to their masters what they had done to them, what the slave masters had done to them. That has not been proven in large scale. Like when slaves got free, they didn't go back and do the things to their masters that their masters had done to them. They didn't do it, right? But there was that fear. Now, if your kids had an opportunity to treat you the way you had treated them, how do you think that would turn out? Would you like that or not like it? I remember seeing something. Oh yeah, there was this. Oh, this is a perfect example of what discipline looks like. And I was like, this mom won. Okay, she won on this one. She had a kid who was cutting up in school. She had like four kids. Her and her husband had like four kids, four kids. I think it was three or four kids. And they were gonna go to Chuck E. Cheese on the weekend. But one of the kids had been cutting up at school all week. So the mom was like, "Oh, we still going to Chuck E. Cheese." And she shows herself taking a soup that they had the week before with corn on the cob in it and all kind of stuff. And she had this thermos and she's pouring the soup into the thermos, putting the top on it so that it stays hot, packs it up. They're going to Chuck E. Cheese. When they get there, she's giving the kids their tokens or cards or whatever they use nowadays. And the kids get to go play. And the one kid who was in trouble didn't get to go play. She was like, "Oh, no, no, but because you played in school, you don't get to play now." She's like, "You get to watch me." And so she had her daughter standing right there and she videotaping while she's on the game. She's doing all of the rides and she's like, "I'm overdoing it, having the time of my life," so that she can see what she's missing out on. And then they go sit down to have pizza and everybody's pulling the pizza. It's got the pull effect, right? And her sibling, the mom is passing out the pizza to everybody. And then she gets to the kid who was in trouble. She opens that thermos and was like, "You get this soup. We get the pizza." Right. And that kid was looking at her like, if that kid could have said something, she would have said something. I know she was saying something in her head. But and they said that, of course, like that next week at school, she was the best behaved kid and all this stuff. But somebody in the comments was like, "I hope you got a good relationship with them other kids because this one gonna put you in a home," right? And that's it. The tables will turn one day. You live long enough, the tables will turn. What are those kids going to do when they now have the power and those tables are turned? Right? They're going to remember all the things that you did. So that power dynamic, you better make sure you do it right. I'm gonna look at these notes right now, but something about when I'm on this podcast, my nose starts running. I think my body gets heated up because I get excited about it. Um, yeah. So I think I touched on this, but there's no one size fits all when it comes to kids. Like you're gonna have some kids who who operate. This is what I was gonna say. I hate when I interrupt myself like this, but there was that kid who stayed on punishment that whole summer. I'm sure he would have preferred a whooping and had it be over with, and he had his whole summer. But trust me, it hurt more for him to be on punishment that whole summer, not be able to talk on the phone to anybody, not being able to go out and have fun or any of those things. This is a big thing that I definitely want to talk about, and I think it is going to require a little bit of time. People always talk about tough love. People always talk about giving their kids tough love. And what I witness almost 100% of the time is the tough. And I don't see the love. And I'm like, tough love can't be, I'm just going to be tough on you. Tough love is supposed to have the love on it too. So why are we missing out on the love part of the tough love? And what are we doing? What are we teaching our kids with that? If it's tough and there's no love part to go with it, what are we teaching them? Again, that we bully people because we have the control, because we have the power. What are we teaching? If we really intend to teach tough love, that is following through with what you say you're going to do. I'm going to take away your bike for a week. I'm going to take away your bike for the week. That's tough love. Tough love doesn't have to be you whooping them. Tough love doesn't have to be cruel and unusual punishment. Let's emphasize the love part of tough love, right? And I remember when I would give my kids whoopings, and I'd always heard, like, don't whoop a kid when you're angry and stuff like that. So I didn't. It wasn't about me being angry. I wanted to teach them to do things a certain way. I wish I had done it differently, but this is my thought process. I would sit down with them. I would talk to them about what it is that they did wrong. And I would ask them what was the expectation to make sure they understood what they did wrong. Like your shoes, you're supposed to put your shoes in the closet. You left them right in front of the door. What was the expectation? Oh, I was supposed to put them in my closet. Okay, why didn't you put them in your closet? Well, because I wanted to go play video games. Okay, discipline, right? And so with that, there could be a whole other set of discipline. Like it could be you're gonna practice coming in, you're gonna put your shoes on, go outside, come back in, take your shoes off, go put them in the closet. Come back in the living room, show me that you took the shoes off, go back in the bedroom, put the shoes on, come back outside, come back. Like we're gonna practice this 5 times, going back and forth to make sure when you come in this house, you take off your shoes and you go put them in the closet. Right? That I'm sure that'll be stuck on a kid's memory far longer than I got a whooping for leaving my shoes in front of the door. Right. But what I would do is talk to them, find out, what they did wrong, what they should have done instead. And I would say, well, you're gonna have to get a whooping now because whooping was the only discipline that I gave. Right. So now you have to get a whooping. And um I remember one time I had my son calculate how many licks he thought he deserved. How many licks do you think you deserve? He said, okay, what all am I in trouble for? And he made his little list. And then he gave me his number. And I gave him exactly what he asked for. And I shouldn't have done that. I should have given him the number I had in mind was far less than the number that he gave me. But I gave him what he said he thought he deserved. And I regret that, you know. Um, but I would always afterwards give him hugs. And I would tell, I love you. I'm doing rhythm scripture. And I would tell them I love them and not to hurt them, but I want them to learn that discipline. Right. And And that even more so now is weird to me because that's exactly what abusive people do. I don't want to say blame men, but we've seen it. We see it in What's Love Got to Do with It. What Ike would go beat Tina, and then he would bring her some flowers or some candy or whatever, right? There's usually some kind of weird thing that people do after they give. The problem is with that, your husband is not your son, it's not your child, right? So for sure, that's weird by itself. Um, And so, just looking at some more, Shep Smith said he was raised like this. Um, and I wanted my kids to know I wasn't angry. I wasn't one of those that was going to yell at them and whip them at the same time. I wasn't those, did not tell you, I wasn't that person. It was, okay, this is what you're going to get. You're going to get this whooping. I'm going to give you a hug and kiss, and going on with the rest of the day, because I didn't want to have that fear part of it in it, but it didn't matter. It still needed to be something better, right? I saw this video where this lady was saying when you're teaching boundaries to kids, the boundary is what you're going to do regardless of what they do. The boundary is not about what they're going to do. And she was giving the example of with her kid. And I really like this. She said, if my kid gets in the elevator, well, I had two feelings about it. I'm going to tell you both of them. When the kid gets in the elevator and she's like, my kid likes to push all the buttons on the elevator. And I hate it when he does that. So I've told him not to do it, but he does it every time we get in the elevator. She said, a boundary is not me threatening to do something to him if he pushes the buttons on the elevator. She said, the boundary is, she said, I tell him when we get in this elevator, I don't want you to push the buttons on the elevator. So I'm going to position my body in front of the buttons. And if you try to reach around me, I'm going to block you with my body, right? She set the boundary of what she was going to do if he did a certain thing. So the boundary wasn't like he has to do a certain thing. I'm telling you what my expectation is. I'm setting this boundary if this is what I'm going to do if you do that thing, right? And I was like, I really appreciate that. She was like, and then she follows through on it. She's standing in front of the buttons. And if he tried to reach around her, she's putting her body in the way to block him from pushing the buttons. Now, the other way, I feel like that was a good approach. But the other way is like, let the kid push the buttons. Of course, kids want to push the buttons. Why can't he push the buttons? If it's one time that I'm in a very big hurry today and you can't push the buttons, fine. But if he's a little kid and he likes to push the buttons, let him push the buttons. Like, why are we trying to adapt the kid to your behavior? When he's in the elevator as an adult and he's got somewhere to go, trust me, he's not going to push all the buttons. But if he's 2, if he's 3, if he's 5 and he wants to push all the buttons, let him push the buttons. Why are we going to take that little bit of joy out of this kid's life? But those boundaries do matter. The structure does matter. Accountability absolutely matters. And so instead of just whooping kids, definitely hold them accountable to what's expected. But you also got to have the positive. There has to be positive reinforcement. If it's all bad or nothing, what are we teaching our kids? Life is not like that. You have a job, you're going to get a check. You do a good job, you might get a raise, right? You do a bad job, you're going to get fired. But there's consequences on both sides. If you don't get a raise, whether you get a raise or not, you might get a promotion. If you do good, there's give and take in this world. Teach our kids that. I believe in giving kids an allowance. I had an allowance growing up. Now I think about it, my kids didn't have no allowance, but my grandbaby's gonna have an allowance. And I bought this really big. I had like a stuffed animal teddy bear. Oh, it's a Coke bottle. I was like, what's the shape of it? It wasn't a crayon. It's a big Coke bottle that I bought for my grandson to put money in. My daughter took it. It's at her house now. It's full of money too. And be like, let me come back and take my piggy bank back now that you done filled it up. No, but kids need to be taught the good and the bad. You do good things, it's gonna be good responses. And I think that sometimes Parents feel afraid to reward kids for the things that they expect them to do. Like, okay, but I tell you to take out the trash and you take out the trash, I'm not gonna give you money for that. If I tell you to wash the dishes and you wash the dishes, I'm not gonna give you money for that. And I understand that mindset, but at the same time, you get the paycheck when you do the work at your job. You don't just get a at a boy, you actually get a paycheck. And if we teach kids, if we give them that opportunity to make that money and we start to teach them entrepreneurship, we teach them to build a business behind it. We teach them how to think about what service can you offer someone to get paid and build your business versus just being an employee. We get to transform the way kids think about things, right? There's some kids in my neighborhood, these two, I don't know, they look like they could be 10, 11, 12, somewhere around there. They're always walking by my house and going to the Circle K down the street. And they have these water bottles with them. I think they're probably going to get ice or whatever, and or water or soda, or whatever they're going to get. And so I was like, when I find out where they live, I want to go and talk to their parents and see if I can pay them to take my trash out. Right? My trash, I got, one of the rolling dumpsters. And I want to give one of them $5 to take it out on Sunday evenings and give the other one $5 to bring it back in on Mondays after they get out of school. Because the trash man comes on Mondays. But I was like, I want to be able to teach the kids that little bit of entrepreneurship, and they get some money that they get to now take and use for whatever they want to use it for. And then hopefully their parents can teach them how to budget that $5. You got five, go put $1 in savings, or at least 50 cents. That would be 10%. But put one of those dollars in savings, and then you got the other $4 to play with, right? Um, but there's so much that we can teach our kids when we get out of the mindset of I just gotta beat them into submission. Because even if they do become like these little robot kids that do everything you say they do, is that love? Do we care if they love us? Do we care that our kids are happy? Do we care that they're living a good life? And when they get older, they've had an enjoyable childhood? I hope that it does matter. I was watching something online, and they were saying that between the ages of 0 and 4, like 50% of what kids are going to learn, they learn between the ages of 0 and 4. And from 4 to 13, they learn, I think, like another 20% or 25%, something like that. By the time they're 18, they're like 85% of what their brain function is at about 85% of what they're going to learn, right? So I'm like, man, if we have taught our kids up until that time that much, that much of who they are is already developed, we have a huge responsibility. Like, how many of us have ever seen parents, go to reach for something and their kid does this? Oh, it breaks my heart every time. I'm like, somebody then hit that kid upside the head. Somebody has hit that kid upside their head. There's no way they should be flinching in that way. It could be like, man, let me, like, the cabinet door might, let me make sure I move out the way of the cabinet door, the refrigerator door. But when they put their hands up like that, they've been hit. They've been hit before. And my kids never had that response on me. I never, like, they never had to worry about me going for, they was getting a whooping on their butt. Not nothing upside the head, nothing in the chest, nothing in the arms, none of that. But you see all kind of stuff on TV, and it's not right, because we are damaging our kids. And sometimes, I don't think anything is irreversible, but sometimes it takes a whole lot to get kids out of a pattern. It takes a whole lot to get them out of this is the way things should be, to change their mindset, to reframe what they think about parenting and childhood and things like that. My daughter has 4 kids. My son doesn't have any. I don't think he's going to have any, because I think that things that shaped his childhood, he's like, I don't want to have kids, and nobody that I can blame for that, except me. I have to take that responsibility. So in my notes, it says parents remember intent, but kids remember impact. Parents are thinking about what I intended for this kid. Well, I go, well, my intention was just to, help them be responsible. My intention was to teach them discipline. My intention was positive. The kids only remember the impact, and the brain for sure only remembers the impact. It remembers what actually happened. It remembers how they felt about it. The brain remembers that stress. Even if they don't have the language for it, even if they can't say, this is what I was feeling, the brain remembers. Excuse me. By the way, if you're not following me, follow me. Subscribe to my YouTube channel, folks. Um, hmm, the brain remembers, the body remembers. If stress does damage on the body remembers all of the things that are happening. We may have forgotten, the body remembers. And kids will start to duplicate the same behavior. You'll see kids who've gotten whoopings take their baby dolls and give their baby dolls whoopings. They'll repeat that behavior with their baby dolls. And then when they have children, they'll repeat that behavior with their children. But it's a dead giveaway when you see a kid saying their baby doll was bad. When you see kids with their little stuffed animals and they're like, my stuffed animal was bad. That's because somebody told them they were bad. Kids don't make that up. They didn't just take that out of thin air. They were taught that. But what they can be taught, they can be untaught. They can be retaught. So, parents, I think it's a good time for reflection. Think about how you raised your kids, how you wish you had raised your kids. Think about who they became. I have a good friend who always says, like, I raised all my kids the same, and I had these kids that turned out like this, and those kids turned out like that, and it ain't my fault. It is absolutely your fault. It's absolutely your fault who your kids turn out to be, because either they were loved into becoming nice people, or they felt unloved and they didn't turn out to be good people. And if you treated them both the same, if you treated all your kids the same, that's the biggest part of the problem, because kids are not the same. I'm going to close now. But if we are honest with ourselves, if we're honest with our kids, if we hold ourselves accountable, then we can hold our kids accountable to being the best they can be. But it all starts with us. It all starts with us choosing to love our kids and do what's best for our kids. And even if it's not making the decision, if you're a parent who spanks your kid right now and you're like, this sounds interesting, but I'm still going to whip my kids, that's your kid. I'm not here to tell you what to do with your kid. But I would encourage you as a parent to look into it a little bit more deeply. And if you're one of those people that's stuck on this is the way I have to do it, then there might require some reprogramming on your part. You may need to speak with somebody. You may need to speak to a therapist or something to see why you're so attached to this one way of doing it. And my charge to you would be to find more creative ways to teach your kids the discipline that it takes for them to grow into successful adults. By the way, I'm Kalisha Washington. I'm your parenting BFF. And I started this Don't Screw Up Your Kids podcast so that I can share with you all the things that I learned in 31 plus years as a parent, in over 13 years as an educator, and all the good, the bad, and the ugly. Hope that you enjoyed this episode. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel, share this with somebody who needs to see it, and I will see you on the next episode of the Don't Screw Up Your Kids podcast. Have a great day.